Ohio de Gozaru, my fellow samurai enthusiasts. Welcome to my 6 Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck build and strategy guide. This time featuring the Masters of the Steadfast Dueling Style, the Immovable Warriors, the Superheavy Samurai. Today we'll be venturing to the Superheavy capital, getting acquainted with the different members of the robotic clan, and learning the intricacies of their finely tuned fighting style. The archetype itself is based on the life of the warrior monk Benkei, albeit loosely, who lived during the later years of Japan's Heian period. Apparently, he's super popular in Japanese folklore, not that I'm surprised. Like the Frightfurs, the Superheavy Samurai debuted in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 anime, being used by main character Go Onizuka, a member of the Lancers who hails from the Standard Dimension in the series. As I'm sure many of us remember that thankfully brief period when the archetype was disrespectfully reduced to a meager engine for that generic synchro trash, I'm happy to announce that this particular build utilizes, and I'm sure to no one's surprise at this point, a complete 60 card count, and is a pure build composed entirely of monsters. And since there are more monsters in the archetype than I care to count, I'll be splitting them up into 5 essential categories, those being the Tuners, the Armor, the Pendulums, the Warriors, and the Supports. So let's start things off with the support monsters and work our way up. The first to appear is the new ninja, Superheavy Samurai Stealthy. Its primary effect lets it special summon itself from the hand if there are no spells or traps in your graveyard. Its second effect lets you tribute it to target a spell or trap card in your opponent's graveyard and set it to your field. However, you must banish it once it leaves the field. Our next monster is a bit on the smaller side, but still essential, Superheavy Samurai Helper, and its numerous shields. Its first effect lets you discard it to increase the defense points of a battling Superheavy Samurai monster by the same number of defense points as another Superheavy Samurai monster that you control. Its second effect lets you banish it from the graveyard when your opponent declares a direct attack, allowing you to target a Superheavy Samurai monster from your graveyard and special summon it. Up next is a Kamuso monk, Superheavy Samurai Flutist. Its primary effect is to tribute itself, using its music to call an ally from the hand to take its place. Its second effect lets you banish it from the graveyard when your Superheavy Samurai on the field is targeted by a card effect, allowing you to negate it. Keep it at 3. After that, we have Superheavy Samurai Giga Gloves. Its effect lets you look at the 5 cards at the top of your deck when it's sent to the graveyard, and then rearrange the cards in whatever order you want. Its second effect lets you banish it from the graveyard and draw a card when your opponent declares a direct attack. And if you draw a Superheavy Samurai monster, which you will, the attacking monster loses all of its attack points, permanently. The next monster is a relative newcomer, and one of the many monster reborns in the archetype, Superheavy Samurai Security, which I'm pretty sure is based on a different archetype, Goyo, which is used in the 5Ds and Arc 5 anime by Sector Security in their respective synchro-based universes. Which I guess would make sense since both archetypes have a heavily Japanese-inspired aesthetic. Its first effect lets you release one of your face-up Superheavy Samurai Pendulum monsters from its confinement in the extra deck and add it to your hand. You can also tribute it to special summon a different Superheavy Samurai monster with at most 1500 attack points from your hand or graveyard. While we're on the subject of false justice, I'll segue into the next monster, Superheavy Samurai Scales. As one of the resident monster reborns, it can bring back a level 4 or lower Superheavy Samurai monster from the graveyard when it's summoned. It can also special summon itself from the hand if your field is empty and your opponent has 2 or more monsters on their field. Keep it at 3. Next, we have the rather attractive Superheavy Samurai Magnet. Its effect lets you special summon a level 4 or lower Superheavy Samurai from your hand when you normal summon it, and then change its battle position afterward. It also makes itself the only monster your opponent is allowed to target for attacks. And what's a samurai army without their weapon transporter, Superheavy Samurai Wagon? Its first effect lets you change its battle position when it's summoned. Its second effect lets you change its battle position if it's in defense mode, and then add a Superheavy Samurai Soul monster to your hand from the deck. Next to last is Superheavy Samurai Thief. Its primary effect lets it special summon itself from the hand. Its best effect, however, can destroy a card in your opponent's back row and steal it from the graveyard to set on your field after tributing it. It also has a different yet similar effect that works on your opponent's pendulum monsters. And finally, we have a Link monster, ironic I know, Superheavy Samurai Scarecrow. To compensate for its non-existent attack points, it has an effect that prevents you from taking damage when it battles. Another effect lets you discard a monster and target a Superheavy Samurai in the graveyard to special summon to its Link arrow in defense mode. Keep it at 3. With the support monsters now out of the way, I'll move on to the archetype's tuner monsters, because no synchro deck is complete without them. First on the tuner list is Superheavy Samurai Drum. Another monster reborn, it lets you target and special summon another Superheavy Samurai from your graveyard after it's destroyed and sent to the graveyard. Next up is Superheavy Samurai Trumpeter, who uses a feudal era war horn shaped like a conch shell, for some reason. Aside from being able to special summon itself from the hand, it can also be special summoned from the graveyard if it's sent there after being used as a tribute for the summon of another Superheavy Samurai monster. Keep it at 3. The next tuner is the minuscule warrior, Superheavy Samurai Battle Ball, the only dark attribute monster in the archetype. Its effect lets you send both it and a leveled monster your opponent controls to the graveyard to synchro summon a Superheavy Samurai monster from your extra deck, whose level is the sum total of those two monsters. After that, we have a relatively new addition to the archetype, Superheavy Samurai Motorbike, which I'm pretty sure is based off the dual runners from the Synchro dimension. Its primary effect lets you discard it to add a different Superheavy Samurai monster to your hand. Its second effect lets you target a machine monster on your field and increase its level by 2. Finally, we have the next to last tuner, Superheavy Samurai Fist. Its primary effect lets it synchro summon a monster using itself and your other Superheavy Samurais if your Superheavy Samurai destroys a monster by battle. Its second effect lets you target a Superheavy Samurai Synchro monster you control and reduce its level by 1 before special summoning itself from the graveyard. With all but one tuner accounted for, the next category we'll go over will be the Pendulum monsters. Continuing with the tuners, we'll start with the recently added Scale 8 Superheavy Samurai Prodigy Wakaushi. It's based on Benkei's rival-turned-ally Minamoto no Yoshitsune, which probably explains why it resembles Yuya from the Arc 5 anime, with the coat cape, odd eyes, the goggles, and the green pants. Its pendulum effect lets you place a different Superheavy Samurai Pendulum monster in the pendulum scale from the deck before special summoning itself to the field. Its monster effect lets you discard a card to special summon a Superheavy Samurai monster from the hand or deck in defense mode. And if it's added to the extra deck after being used to synchro summon, you can put it back on the pendulum scale. Keep it at 3. Up next is one of the original pendulum monsters of the archetype, the Scale 8 Superheavy Samurai General Coral. Its pendulum effect, fitting for a backline general, provides a Superheavy Samurai you control with an extra attack if it destroys a monster by battle. Its monster effect lets you tribute, at most, 2 Superheavy Samurai monsters to draw that many cards. The next Pendulum monster is an alternate version of its main deck counterpart, the Scale 1 Superheavy Samurai Monk Big Benkei. Its Pendulum effect lets you search for a Superheavy Samurai Soul monster in the deck. Its monster effect lets you send its other self to the graveyard from the deck to special summon it from your hand. And like Wakaushi, if it's sent to the extra deck after being used to synchro summon, it can place itself onto the Pendulum scale. Keep it at 3. While we're not entirely done going over the Pendulum monsters, the remaining ones fit into the next category as well, so we'll shift gears and get started on the next segment. Now that we're finally at the monsters that can actually attack while in defense mode, we'll continue with the upgraded version of Wakaushi, the Scale 1 Superheavy Samurai Commander Shanawo. Its Pendulum effect lets you special summon him when your opponent declares an attack and reduces the monster's attack points to 0 while also negating its effects. During the battle phase, if Shanawo was synchro summoned, you can special summon another Superheavy Samurai from the graveyard or your spell and trap zones before placing it on the Pendulum scale. The final Pendulum monster is a Scale 1 Superheavy Samurai General Jade. When it's on the Pendulum scale, you'll be locked into Pendulum summoning Superheavy Samurai monsters. But that's not much of a hindrance. You can also target a Superheavy Samurai monster you control and increase its level by 1. And not only can it be tribute summoned using only one Superheavy Samurai monster, but it can also change its battle position when it's summoned. Next is the main character himself, Superheavy Samurai Big Benkei. Like Jade, he can change his battle position when he's summoned. He also allows for all the other Superheavy Samurais to attack while in defense mode, if they don't already have the effect. Now we move on to the non-pendulum synchros. The first being Superheavy Samurai Sword Master Musashi. This one is named out of a legendary Japanese swordsman, Miyamoto Musashi. When you synchro summon it, its effect allows you to target and add a machine monster from your graveyard to your hand. Next is Superheavy Samurai Ogre Shutendoji. Named after a character from Japanese folklore, the Oni leader Shutendoji. It acts as a Harpy's feather duster as soon as it's synchro summoned. Sneaking their way onto the next spawn on the list is Superheavy Samurai Stealth Ninja. It can halve its original defense points and attack directly until the turn ends. And if a card effect destroys it, you can special summon it from the graveyard during the following standby phase, which is probably a reference to the famous substitution jutsu that ninjas are known for. Speaking of ninjas, we have Superheavy Samurai Ninja Sarutobi, named after Sarutobi Sasuke, a ninja character in Japanese children's stories. During either player's turn, its effect lets you destroy a spell or trap card on the field and deal 500 points of damage to your opponent. Next is a monster I'm sure that fans of a certain anime will find familiar, Superheavy Samurai Beast Kyuubi, named after the nine-tailed fox. Its effect lets it gain an extra 900 defense points for every special summon monster your opponent controls. Going back to Japanese mythology, we have Superheavy Samurai Warlord Susanoo, named after the Japanese god of storms, Susanoo. Similar to Sarutobi, it has a quick effect involving your opponent's spell and trap cards that you can activate during both players' turns. However, Susanoo's effect differs by stealing spells and traps from the opponent's graveyard rather than destroying them, though they still get banished once you use them. It's basically Stealthy's effect without the extra cost. The strongest synchro monster in the deck with the highest defense points of all synchro monsters is none other than Superheavy Samurai Steam Train King. It's a train yokai with its face being based on the Oni. It's also the only Superheavy Samurai monster that doesn't follow the steadfast dueling strategy the others monsters use. since it actually moves. Its first effect lets you discard 2 cards from the hand to destroy that many cards your opponent controls. In comparison, its second effect lets you banish all the spell and trap cards in both graveyards to deal 200 points of damage for each one. And finally, we have the final warrior on the list, Superheavy Samurai Brave Masurawo, who's a spitting image of the deck's user Go Onizuka. Its primary effect lets you destroy a Super Heavy Samurai card you control if one of your Super Heavy Samurai monsters, or all of them, would be destroyed by battle or card effect. Its second effect lets you draw cards until you have 3 in your hand if your opponent activates a spell or trap card. With the main monsters out of the way, we can finally move on to their weapons and armor. The Soul cards! The first piece of armor is Superheavy Samurai Soul Horns. Like all the other equipped monsters, its first effect targets a Superheavy Samurai monster you control to equip itself to, whether it's in the hand or on the field. It can also special summon itself when it's equipped. Its unique effect lets the Superheavy Samurai monster equipped with it attack twice per turn. The next piece of armor is none other than Superheavy Samurai Soul Beads. When it's equipped to a monster, that monster is immune to card effect destruction once per turn. And if it's in the hand when one of your Superheavy Samurai monsters is destroyed by battle, you can discard the beads and special summon that monster in attack mode, making it another monster reborn for the deck. After the prayer beads, we have the only fire attribute monster in the archetype, Superheavy Samurai Soul Fire Suit. When it's equipped to a monster, it changes that monster's level to 5. Alternatively, you can discard it from your hand to make a defense precision Superheavy Samurai monster you control indestructible for the rest of the turn. However, that monster will lose 800 defense points until then as well. One of the most essential pieces of armor you'll need if you find yourself in a bind is Superheavy Samurai Soul Peacemaker. When it's equipped, you contribute the monster it's equipped to and special summon a Superheavy Samurai from the deck. It also makes it so your opponent can only target the equipped monster with attacks. Next up is one of my personal favorites, Superheavy Samurai Soul Buster Gauntlet. When it's equipped to a monster, it gains 400 defense points. When your Superheavy Samurai monster in defense mode battles, you can discard the gauntlet during the damage step and make that monster's defense points double their original. Next, we have Superheavy Samurai Soul Bang Cannon, my third favorite card. When it's equipped to a monster, it grants an additional 1000 defense points. If it's in the graveyard during the battle phase and your opponent activates a card effect, you can banish it to negate the effect, destroy that card, and then destroy all other monsters on the field. And then inflict 1000 points of damage to both players. Superheavy Samurai Soul Claw is next, and it adds an extra 400 attack and defense points to whichever monster it's equipped to, while also making it indestructible during battle. You can also detach it from your monster to special summon it to the field. Next to last is a new piece of armor, Superheavy Samurai Soul Gaia Booster. When it's equipped to a monster, that monster becomes a tuner. It can also detach itself from the monster to appear on the field. Last but not least, we have the final monster on the list, the crossbow Superheavy Samurai Soul Piercer. When it's equipped, it allows the monster who wields it to inflict piercing damage. Its second effect lets you search for a different Superheavy Samurai monster if it's sent to the graveyard from the field. Alright, now that the list is over and done with, it's time to get on to the exciting part, the strategy guide. As I've mentioned, the playstyle for Superheavy Samurai is referred to as steadfast dueling in the anime. This means that during the duels that take place, specifically the action duels, Go Onizuka remains in place while dueling, builds his defenses, and doesn't attempt to gather action spells. This is because the deck can be rendered useless if any end up in the graveyard, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can't use it. And since their best monsters can attack while in defense mode, they're good at protecting your life points. Now, the deck works by utilizing its various monsters and their effects in tandem to cover the usual weaknesses that spells and trap cards typically address. Additionally, as with any army of warriors, you'll need to plan your tactics carefully to not only maintain your advantage, but also make sure that you have contingency plans in case your opponent attempts to counter your current one. All in all, there are 4 or 5 primary methods the archetype uses to remain on top. Stonewalling, obviously, battle disruption, burn damage, spell trap suppression, and graveyard manipulation. All of which can overlap, making the archetype more challenging to combat. This particular build focuses mainly on the former two and the latter. However, while the deck is strong, there are still several cards that can severely disrupt it, specifically cards that negate monster effects like Skill Drain, since attacking in defense mode is a sheer continuous effect, or cards that specifically stop special summoning or punish you for having defense position monsters. Thankfully, most players nowadays don't bother using a majority of those cards, at least to my knowledge. But since Skill Drain, which I loathe with a burning passion, is still a significant threat even now, I'll be sure to discuss the best ways to get rid of it on the off chance that you do happen to run into it. There's quite a bit to go over, so I'll start things off by first going over the deck's best starting strategies. Some of the best cards to start the duel with are the Searchers, Wakaushi, Soul Piercer, Monk Big Benkei, Motorbike, and/or Wagon. Wakaushi can save your normal summon by using its Pendulum effect, which will not only let you add another Super Heavy to your hand, but also place Monk Big Benkei in the remaining Pendulum zone, which will let you search for a Soul monster. If you add Soul Piercer using this play, or if it's already in your hand, you can attach it to Wakaushi before using it to link summon Scarecrow, which will add another monster to your hand via Soul Piercer's effect. Also, depending on what other monsters you start with, Scarecrow is a good way to not only bring back monsters like Soul Piercer, but also fill the graveyard with monsters that have graveyard effects, specifically Soul Bane Cannon, Giga Gloves, Flutist, and Helper. Your opponent likely won't think much of them at the time unless their graveyard effect immediately activates, so the weaker ones are less likely to be hit by banishing cards like Called by the Grave. Suppose you use Scarecrow to send Scales to the graveyard, or another monster while Scales is already there. In that case, you can special summon it and use its effect to bring Soul Piercer back so you can send it to the graveyard again, preferably by Synchro Summoning, which can get you access to your even leveled Synchros, if you revive a tuner on the field, or already have one. In fact, you can even use Motorbike's effect to add Trumpeter to your hand, and then use Scarecrow's effect to revive Scales. If you have Wagon in your starting hand, you can use its effect to add the Soul monster that you need, especially if your hand looks less than favorable. You can also use it to bait out your opponent's hand traps. If you have Peacemaker, you can use it on Wagon to special summon whichever monster you think will better suit your situation. Big Benkei for a strong defense, Wakaushi for the previous strategy, and if you're going second and your opponent has a leveled monster you can use, Battle Ball, which can both get rid of it and give you a strong Synchro monster, provided the levels are right. Flutist can set off different combos depending on what you have in hand, and using its effect to special summon a monster or using it as a material for Scarecrow will let you stop your opponent from targeting your monsters with Imperm or other targeting hand traps. Those are the most basic starting combos for the deck, so I'll delve a bit deeper into the rest of their summoning combos. I've already explained this one, but I'll revisit it for the sake of clarity. By summoning Wakaushi, you can use its effect to special summon a different Superheavy Samurai from the deck, meaning that if you manage to have Soul Piercer in the graveyard when you do so, you can special summon Scales and use its effect to revive Soul Piercer. With those 3 monsters alone, your synchro summoning options are Sarutobi, Shanawo, Steam Train King, and Masurawo. If it's the start of the duel, I'd recommend either the former or the latter, with the other 2 being better suited for later in the duel. If you synchro summon a level 8 first and didn't use Wakaushi's Pendulum effect already, you can use its monster effect to put it on the Pendulum scale after using it to synchro summon. While the remaining Pendulum scale is still empty, you can special summon it back to the field. If you put Monk Big Benkei into the other Pendulum scale with Wakaushi's effect, you can use it to add Soul Gaia booster to your hand. From there, you can equip Soul Gaia to any of your monsters, and then unequip it to get another synchro material you can use to special summon Masurawo. Additionally, by using Soul Piercer as a synchro material, you can add whichever monster you think you'll need for the next 2 turns. Scarecrow can be used here too, but I don't want to dwell on this any longer than I already have. Now that the most complicated combos are out of the way, we can move on to something simpler. Since General J can be tribute summoned using only a single monster, you can use a special summon Trumpeter as a tribute, and then revive it using its own effect. This will give you access to the level 10 Susanoo. On a similar note, you can also special summon Thief alongside Trumpeter to provide you with the materials needed to summon Marusawa. Monk Big Benkei can be special summoned from the hand using its own effect, and can be used with any of your tuners to access a good number of your synchros. And since it has the same pendulum placement effect as Wakaushi, you can place it and then use its pendulum effect to add a soul monster to your hand. Alternatively, suppose you summon a different monster alongside Monk and use it to summon Scarecrow. In that case, you can revive the Big Benkei you sent to the graveyard for Monk's summon and have both on the field, and the original Benkei's effect will allow Monk to attack. Going back to General Jade, its pendulum effect can also prove useful along with Fist effect, as both effects can alter the levels of your Superheavy Samurai monsters, with Jade's effect being able to increase the level of one of your monsters once per turn. Fist's Graveyard effect decreases the level of one of your synchro monsters, meaning there's a lot you can do with both, which I'll go over later since that falls into a different part of the guide. For now, we'll go over the combos involving the deck's complicated relationship with spells and trap cards. Now, I've already mentioned how the deck can't use most spells or traps without crippling itself. Still, thankfully, the Superheavy Samurai have a clever workaround for that weakness: stealing such cards from the opponent. Though how far you can go while doing so depends entirely on what your opponent is using. Additionally, by stealing certain cards from the graveyard, you can further hinder your opponent's plays if you're clever enough. In the main deck, Stealthy and Thief are the monsters that you use to take spells and traps from your opponent. Stealthy having a quick effect means you'll be able to use it as soon as a good spell or trap card is sent to the graveyard, like Imperm, or one that you don't want your opponent to banish to start a new combo. Thief is a bit slower than Stealthy, but just as useful, as it not only destroys spells and traps your opponent already controls, regardless of whether or not they activate it, but by choosing to set it on your field after destroying it, your opponent can't activate the card's graveyard effect, if it has one. It's also suitable for baiting out troublesome cards since your opponent is more likely to trigger the one that you target on reflex. Cards like Skill Drain are also useless against Thief's effect since it tributes itself for cost and resolves in the graveyard, meaning you can safely get rid of it. In the extra deck, there are 4 monsters with effects that focus on spells and traps. Shuten Doji has its Harpy's Feather Duster effect, which is always useful, as it'll likely force your opponent to activate a card to negate it, giving you more freedom to make your plays. Steam Train King can destroy spells and traps as well, though not as many as Shuten Doji can. On the plus side, its ability to banish spells and traps from the graveyard and deal burn damage can come in handy later in the duel. If you combine the effects of Steam Train King and Sarutobi, you can keep your opponent's back row in check while gradually burning them over several turns. You can also use Susanoo to steal the best spells and traps from your opponent's graveyard for your own benefit. Even better, Sarutobi can destroy spells and trap cards on your field too, so you can use Susanoo to do some grave robbing before letting Sarutobi destroy whatever it's set. keeping those cards out of your opponent's reach since they'll be banished. Moving on, we'll get to the deck's greatest strength, its battle tactics. We already know that the Warriors of the archetype possess high defense points, which they utilize to attack with, giving them an advantage in any battle they partake in. However, not only do the Superheavy Samurai have various ways to increase their already impressive defenses, but they can also utilize other tactics to stall and even special summon during the battle phase. Moreover, they can fully deplete the opponent's monster's attack points, and protect your own life points if your opponent somehow manages to eradicate your defenses. Starting with the main deck, we have Magnet, which attracts all attacks from your opponent's monsters. Naturally, if you have 2 on the field, it'll create a battle lock, meaning your opponent won't be able to attack during the battle phase. And while I haven't had the chance to test it myself, I'm pretty sure there's a more straightforward way to initiate a battle lock using only one magnet, and that's by pairing it with another monster equipped with Soul Peacemaker. The monsters you'll want in your hand during the battle phase are Helper, Soulbuster Gauntlet, Soulfire Suit, and Soul Beads. The combo of Helper and Soulbuster Gauntlet is my personal favorite of all the deck's combos because of the massive damage output. Let's put it into perspective for a moment. You can make your battling Superheavy Samurai's defense points double their original, regardless of what they were before, with Gauntlet's effect, and then, in a separate chain, that's important, use Helper to boost those double defense points even higher. It even includes boosted defense points if the monster it targets is equipped with soul monsters that increase defense points. Just be careful not to mix up the order. Here's an example right here. Did you see that? And that's only a taste of how much power they can gain. You know what? I think I want to see it again. Man, pulling that combo never gets old. Imagine attacking one of the weaker super heavies only for its defense points to skyrocket, completely unable to stop the attack. I'd probably quit for a few months after that. One of the best super heavies to use this combo with is Beast Kyuubi, since it increases its strength for every special summon monster your opponent controls. Can you imagine just how much damage that could do? Yeah, let's calculate it. Let's see. If the opponent has 6 special summon monsters, that's an extra 5,400 defense points added to its original 25, with the biggest defense boosters in the archetype, Soul Shield Wall with an extra 1,200, Soul Claw with 500, and Soul Bank Cannon with 1,000 extra defense points. And if you attack with the strongest Synchro Steam Train King and its 4,800 defense points, double them with Soul Buster Gauntlet and then use Helper to boost it by Kyuubi's new defense points, that comes up to 20,200 defense points. Wait, what? But anyway, moving on. If you have a large number of Superheavy Samurai on your field and your opponent somehow manages to destroy several of them, having Soul Beads in the hand will ensure that you won't be entirely defenseless before your next turn. However, it's wise to only use them if your opponent's last attack destroyed your monster, since you'll only be able to revive it in attack mode, which your monsters, minus Scarecrow, should never be in, at least not for long. Soulfire Suit will also let you protect the monsters that you want to keep on the field since it makes your monster indestructible. Speaking of indestructible, Soul Bead's equip effect can mitigate the losses you'll suffer from Soul Bang's effect. Marusawa's effect can also do the same, I'm pretty sure, though I don't recall ever attempting it. Soul Claw's equip effect can offer your monster protection from being destroyed by battle. If you equipped it to Scarecrow, just like in its artwork, you can have a 1-monster Stonewall that reduces all battle damage to 0. Just make sure you have a Flutist in the graveyard in case your opponent tries to target it with a negation effect. Giga Gloves, Soulbane Cannon, and Helper are 3 cards you'll definitely want in the graveyard if your defenses are less than ideal. I like to call this following combo the Soulbane Cannon Overload. I was going to go with Overdrive, but Overload sounded more appropriate. As a battle phase effect, so long as you trick your opponent into activating something during the battle phase, you can, at the very least, negate it. However, if you want to make full use of the effect, I recommend using it when a card on the field activates, since a card needs to be destroyed for the destruction and burn effect to be applied. If your field ends up wiped, Helper and Giga Glove's ability to special summon and deplete attack points during a direct attack respectively will definitely save you, so long as your opponent doesn't have anything to negate them. And those are the majority of the strategies I'm familiar with. Now that that's out of the way, it's time to move on to the final portion of the video, the deck's final stats. As always, I'll be assigning scores to what I believe are the 3 most important categories that determine a deck's worthiness: its overall power, its adaptability, and its recovery potential. Starting with its power rating, I'm giving it a perfect 5 out of 5 BattleBots. Now, usually, a deck like this will receive no more than 3 because of a monster's low to average attack points. But since their battle prowess relies on their defense points, which they have in abundance, they're well deserving of an exception to the usual judgment standards. Not to mention that they can easily increase their defense points when they need to. Next is the deck's adaptability rating. I had a bit of trouble deciding on this one, but I settled on 3 BattleBots out of 5. While they can't outplay and even dominate most decks that they come across, they still require time to place the necessary monsters in their optimal positions, which isn't always ideal. And finally, we have the deck's recovery rating. For this, I'm also giving them 3 BattleBots out of 5. I feel that it's an appropriate score given that while they do have many different monsters, which can be used to build their defenses back up in case of a board wipe, too many can be easily negated by hand traps and rendered useless if you can't afford to have a backup plan, especially if it's late in the game and you already used a majority of your best resources. And that concludes my Superheavy Samurai deck building strategy guide. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more Yu-Gi-Oh! And gaming content. And be sure to vote in the current poll for the deck you want to see me do a video for next. But for now, I must return to my training. Sayonara de Gozaru.